Finding out your sister is marrying your ex-fiancé feels a lot like watching someone try on your clothes and hearing everyone say they look better on them. Except in this case, the clothes were a 3-year relationship and a diamond ring that apparently just needed a different finger to shine properly. When Margot announced her engagement to Trevor during our Thanksgiving dinner, I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Not from surprise about the engagement. Their poorly hidden affair had been the elephant in every family gathering for months, but because Trevor had been my fiancé just 8 months earlier. Welcome to my life in Fairview Heights, Illinois, where family ties double as garrots. I, Sylvie Cooper, 32-year-old corporate attorney who bills $400 an hour to dismantle other people's poor decisions, somehow couldn't see the demolition crew working on my own life. Meanwhile, my younger sister Margot, 28, a yoga instructor whose greatest accomplishment is a downward dog with 14 Instagram likes, had been perfecting her form with my man behind my back. "We just connected on a spiritual level," Margot announced to our slack-jawed family, twirling that recycled diamond ring. My ring with a slight redesign. Translation: they rotated the same damn diamond 90 degrees and called it symbolic of their new perspective on love. How philosophical for a man who once told me astrology was astronomy for people who failed math. Mom nearly spilled her wine in excitement, while Dad looked like he was mentally calculating how another wedding would delay his retirement. Again. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mother gushed, apparently forgetting that less than a year ago, she was helping me pick out wedding invitations for the same man. "And they want a June wedding at the Lakeview Country Club. The same venue. The same month. Probably the same floral arrangements I had pinned to the wedding board Trevor had called unnecessarily elaborate. Apparently, it wasn't the elaborate plans he objected to, just the bride attached to them. And Sylvie," Margot turned to me with those wide, innocent eyes that had convinced our parents she was too naive to possibly have stolen the car at 16. "I want you to be my maid of honor. Nobody knows Trevor better than you." The dining room fell silent except for Dad's fork clattering against his plate. My mother's frozen smile could have preserved mammoth DNA for centuries. "After all, you're my sister," Margot continued, oblivious to the psychological war zone she'd just carpet-bombed. "And I want my sister by my side on the most important day of my life, the most important day of her life, standing next to the man who was supposed to be part of the most important day of mine." "I'd be honored," I replied with a smile that would have made my litigation opponents dive for cover. The words tasted like battery acid, but watching the relief flood my family's faces was almost worth it. Almost. Trevor had the decency to study his cranberry sauce like it contained the secrets of the universe. He should be studying it. I was calculating how feasible it would be to accidentally spill some down his crisp white shirt, the one I had bought him last Christmas. "We'll have so much fun planning everything," Margot squealed, clapping her hands like she'd just been cast in a community theater production of How to Destroy Your Sister's Last Shred of Dignity. Fun. Right. Like root canal without anesthesia is fun. Like finding out your ex is sleeping with your boss is fun. Like watching your sister try on wedding dresses for her marriage to your ex-fiancé is fun. "You could wear that burgundy dress you bought for the Harrison wedding," my mother suggested helpfully, already mentally choreographing the perfect family photos. The ones where we'd all pretend we weren't one passive-aggressive comment away from a Dateline NBC special. "Actually, I was thinking emerald green for the bridesmaids," Margot said. "It'll complement the garden reception." Of course. Emerald green. The color Trevor once told me made me look washed out. I wondered if he'd share that opinion with his bride-to-be or if that particular criticism was reserved exclusively for me. What no one at that table knew, not even Trevor with his smug face partially hidden behind a napkin, was that while they were all busy planning the wedding of the century, I was busy planning something else entirely. Something that would make their June garden party look like a preschool play date. Because while Trevor was finding himself in my sister's yoga pants, he was also finding Amber from the accounting department at his firm. The same Amber who had been posting snowy cabin getaway photos on Instagram during Trevor's essential business trip to Aspen 3 weeks ago. The trip that was so important he couldn't possibly attend our cousin's baby shower with Margot. And those messages, oh, those glorious messages where Trevor spent 3 years of our relationship critiquing every aspect of Margot's personality, the ones where he called her spiritually bankrupt but with excellent cleavage, and as deep as a puddle on a sunny day, all safely backed up to my cloud storage for the appropriate moment. Some might call it petty. I call it evidence discovery, which is literally what I do for a living. So while Margot prattled on about flower arrangements and Trevor pretended he had suddenly developed an intense interest in table linens, I silently calculated just how spectacular their wedding would be. Not because of the hand-calligraphed place cards or the organic, locally sourced menu they were inevitably planning, but because of the maid of honor speech I would deliver with all the precision of a tactical missile strike. As my father refilled wine glasses and my mother started a Pinterest board right at the dinner table, I smiled graciously and played my part. Supportive sister, mature ex, graceful loser. But beneath my green bean casserole contribution and polite inquiries about honeymoon destinations, I was already rehearsing my toast. It would be one for the wedding video highlight reel, though perhaps not the highlight they were expecting. To Trevor and Margot, I practiced silently, raising my water glass. May your marriage be as faithful as your courtship. The thing about being your sister's maid of honor when she's marrying your ex-fiancé is that it comes with a special kind of torture not covered by the Geneva Convention. Like yesterday's emergency dress fitting, where Margot insisted I needed to see her in the perfect dress at Elegance Bridal in downtown Fairview Heights. What do you think? Margot twirled in a cloud of ivory lace and delusion, wearing what was essentially the dress I had bookmarked in my wedding planner, the one Trevor had called too princessy when we were engaged. It's very you, I responded, which Margot took as a compliment because self-awareness isn't taught at yoga teacher training. The boutique owner, Marie, hovered nearby with the nervous energy of someone who sensed she was one comment away from starring in a viral TikTok titled "Bride and Sister Destroy Bridal Shop. Gone Wrong." You know what would make this perfect? Margot gasped. Mom's pearl earrings, the ones she always said would be mine on my wedding day. Those earrings. The ones Mom had actually promised to me first, until Margot's tears during a teenage tantrum resulted in a vague, "we'll see who gets married first" compromise. Turns out treachery is the fast track to family heirlooms. Those would certainly complement the neckline, I offered, mentally adding earrings to the list of things Margot had repossessed from my future. Later that week, Mom corralled us into her kitchen for wedding planning and girl time, which translated to me addressing invitations while Margot and Mom flipped through reception venues on Pinterest. Nothing says quality family bonding quite like hand-cramping my way through addressing envelopes to people who watched me get passed over like last week's leftovers. "Oh, did we show you the engagement photos yet?" Mom asked, sliding her iPad across the counter with the enthusiasm of someone who'd forgotten which daughter had been engaged to this man first. There they were, Trevor and Margot, frolicking through Westfield Park, where he had proposed to me, in coordinated cream outfits that made them look like a commercial for antidepressants. "Finding joy in life's unexpected journeys," the caption read, as if their journey hadn't been a direct flight over my emotional wreckage. "Trevor looks so happy," Mom observed, with all the sensitivity of a bulldozer in a china shop. "Happier than in our engagement photos?" The words slipped out before I could catch them. The kitchen froze. Mom's smile flickered like bad fluorescent lighting. "Sylvie," she started, her voice taking on that patronizing tone reserved for children and emotional women. "We all know this is difficult, but it's been 8 months. Trevor and Margot have a special connection." Special connection. Like the one between a parasite and its host. "You're right," I conceded, addressing another envelope with slightly more force than necessary. "Their connection is truly one of a kind. Just like the connection between Trevor and Amber from accounting. I'd been doing some light social media reconnaissance, not stalking. Stalking is for amateurs without legal training. Amber's Instagram was a goldmine of indiscretion. While Margot was picking out floral arrangements, Amber was posting ambiguous captions like, "when he says he's figuring things out," alongside photos of mimosa brunches and hotel room service. The most recent post? A selfie with a distinctive view of the Chicago skyline, The exact weekend Trevor told Margot he had a tax seminar that couldn't be rescheduled. Dad, the only sane person in our family, caught my eye during dinner that night as Margot detailed her wedding diet plan. "I'm doing this special cleanse Trevor's fitness instructor recommended," she explained, pushing salmon around her plate. "I need to lose 8 pounds to fit into my dress perfectly." "I thought the whole point of custom bridal gowns was that they fit you, not the other way around," I noted, spearing a roasted potato. "Well, Trevor mentioned he's always loved how fit his colleague Jason's wife looks in their vacation photos, so—" Margot trailed off, examining a piece of asparagus like it might contain secrets to marital bliss. Dad coughed uncomfortably. "Sounds like Trevor has a lot of opinions about women's bodies." It's called having standards, Dad," Margot replied defensively. "Trevor appreciates people who take care of themselves." I bit my tongue so hard I nearly drew blood. Trevor, who considered walking from his car to his office adequate cardio, and whose idea of vegetable intake was the pickle on his cheeseburger, had suddenly developed fitness standards for his bride. "Speaking of Trevor's standards," I said carefully, "have you two discussed finances yet? I remember he was pretty adamant about keeping separate accounts." Margot laughed that tinkling laugh she'd perfected in high school drama club. "Oh, we're combining everything. He says it shows our complete trust in each other." Complete trust. From the man who had password-protected his phone during our entire relationship because of client confidentiality. "How progressive of him," I murmured, meeting Dad's equally skeptical gaze. The wedding planning steamrolled forward. Cake tastings, chocolate with raspberry filling, my favorite, not Margot's previous vanilla preference, venue confirmations, Lakeview Country Club's Garden Terrace, where Trevor had once promised me we'd have our reception, and bridal shower preparations, organized by our mother with more enthusiasm than she'd shown for my law school graduation. The bridal shower was a masterpiece of awkwardness, hosted at our childhood home with every female relative, friend, and apparently random acquaintance Margot had ever met. I stood in the corner, wearing the prescribed blush-pink outfit that made me look like undercooked salmon, holding a clipboard and checking off gifts. "Kitchen gadgets from Aunt Linda," I announced mechanically as Margot unwrapped a blender. "Oh my God, it's the exact one Sylvie had on her registry last year," Margot exclaimed, either oblivious to or actively enjoying the collective cringe that rippled through the room. Our cousin Rachel shot me a sympathetic look over her champagne flute. At least someone remembered my short-lived engagement registry before it was deleted into the digital ether. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of ribbon, tissue paper, and increasingly uncomfortable games, including How Well Do You Know the Groom, a particular form of psychological warfare I wasn't prepared for. Trevor's favorite vacation spot? Mom read from a card. "Aspen," Margot answered confidently. I took a long sip of champagne to stop myself from mentioning that Trevor had mysteriously developed this preference only after meeting ski bunny Amber. As the party wound down and guests departed with their miniature succulent party favors, another idea lifted directly from my Pinterest board, I slipped away to the bathroom for a moment of peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia, my best friend and the only person who knew what I was really planning. "Operation Wedding Crasher still a go? Collected more evidence today." I smiled at my reflection in the mirror, the first genuine smile I'd managed all day. Because while Margot was collecting Le Creuset cookware and monogrammed towels, I was collecting something far more valuable: truth. And unlike the something borrowed in Margot's wedding checklist, I planned to return it with interest. "Sylvie? Are you in there? We need to discuss the bachelorette party." Margot's voice called through the door, high and demanding. I took a deep breath and texted Olivia back. "Absolutely. The show goes on." Then I plastered on my supportive sister smile and opened the door, ready for the next act in this tragicomedy. Because if there's one thing better than watching your sister marry your ex-fiancé, it's watching them both realize they've made a terrible, terrible mistake. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine meticulously documented, professionally presented, and served with a side of public humiliation, preferably at a venue that costs my father $35,000. 2 months into this bridesmaid charade, I'd mastered the art of the supportive sister smile, a particular arrangement of facial muscles that conveys enthusiasm while concealing homicidal ideation. I needed that smile on Tuesday night when Margot dragged me to Trevor's corporate mixer at the Westfield Plaza Hotel, an event she insisted required sister moral support. I'm so nervous about meeting all of Trevor's colleagues, Margot whispered as we entered the ballroom filled with accountants attempting to appear interesting. What if they don't like me? Impossible, I assured her, scanning the room. Just do that thing where you giggle and touch your collarbone. Works every time. Margot, missing the sarcasm completely, nodded earnestly. You're right. Trevor says his boss loves when people are approachable. Trevor's boss, the same Mr. Donovan who had sent me a handwritten congratulations card when Trevor and I got engaged. I wondered if he still had corporate amnesia, or if Trevor had concocted some revisionist history where I was the villain. Speaking of approachable, I murmured, spotting a blonde woman in a red dress by the bar. Isn't that Amber from accounting? Margot's head snapped around so fast I worried about whiplash. Where? Trevor mentioned her. Apparently she's been causing drama in the office. I bet she has. Especially during that tax seminar in Chicago. Red dress, 3 o'clock, I directed, watching Margot's eyes narrow. She doesn't look that pretty, Margot sniffed, tossing her expertly highlighted hair. Trevor says she's desperate for attention. Interesting perspective, I replied, noting how Trevor's arm tensed when he spotted us looking at Amber. Even more interesting was how Amber's smile faltered when she saw Trevor with Margot. That's when the evening took an unexpected turn. Sylvie Cooper, is that you? A familiar voice called from behind me. I turned to find Ethan Walsh, Trevor's college roommate and former best friend. The same Ethan who mysteriously disappeared from Trevor's life right after our breakup. Ethan! What are you doing here? I asked, genuinely surprised as we hugged. I'm handling some of the firm's legal work now, he explained, then nodded politely to Margot. And you must be the new fiancé. Congratulations. His tone carried all the warmth of a January morning in Illinois. Thanks, Margot replied, clearly trying to place him in the Trevor mythology. Have you and Trevor stayed close? Ethan's smile tightened. Not particularly. We had a difference of opinion about how certain situations should be handled. Trevor chose that moment to materialize at Margot's side, his face performing an impressive journey from shock to forced joviality. Ethan, man, I had no idea you'd be here tonight. Surprise, Ethan said flatly. Hamilton and Reed brought me on last month. Small world. The smallest, Trevor agreed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. We should catch up. Definitely. Ethan nodded, then turned to me. Actually, Sylvie, I could use your professional opinion on something. Do you have a minute? Before Trevor could object, Ethan whisked me away to a quiet corner of the ballroom, leaving Trevor to explain to Margot who exactly this frost-inducing man was. So you're the maid of honor, Ethan stated, not bothering to hide his disapproval. That's either sainthood or masochism. Maybe it's strategy, I suggested, sipping my champagne. Ethan studied me with new interest. Now, that sounds more like the Sylvie Cooper I remember. He lowered his voice. Listen, there's something you should know. The reason Trevor and I aren't friends anymore. Let me guess. You called him out for cheating on me with my sister? Ethan shook his head. No. For cheating on you with multiple women, including your sister. I found out he'd been seeing at least 3 other people during your engagement. The champagne turned bitter in my mouth. I knew about Margot. I suspected Amber. Who else? His client from Phoenix. His personal trainer. And someone at his brother's office. Ethan recited, looking genuinely sorry to be the bearer of such news. When I confronted him, he said you smothered his inner explorer, whatever the hell that means. My inner litigator took over. Can you prove any of this? Ethan's expression shifted from sympathetic to conspiratorial. I've got texts, emails, and photos backed up from when he asked me to cover for him. I kept everything after he tried to convince our entire friend group that you were emotionally unstable and made up the cheating. The ballroom seemed to shift around me as new possibilities crystallized. This wasn't just about exposing Trevor's affair with Margot anymore. This was about revealing his entire fraudulent character, To my sister, to my parents, and to all 150 wedding guests who'd been sold the great love story of Trevor and Margot. "Ethan," I said carefully, "how would you feel about attending a wedding in June?" His slow smile matched mine. "I do love an open bar and family drama." The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and set up a command center in my apartment. Spreadsheets, timelines, screenshots, and evidence folders turned my living room into what Olivia later described as a serial killer wall, but for adultery. Olivia arrived at noon with coffee and her marketing expertise. "So what's the plan now? Nuclear option?" "Tactical strike," I corrected, taping up a new photo. "We expose everything, not just about Margot, but all of it. The question is timing and delivery." We spent the day constructing what we called Project Wedding Toast, a multimedia presentation of Trevor's greatest hits of betrayal, complete with a chronological timeline of his overlapping relationships during our engagement. "The real question," Olivia said as we reviewed our work, "is whether you're trying to stop the wedding or just ruin it." I considered this as I added Amber's Chicago photos to the presentation. "I want Margot to make an informed decision. If she still wants to marry him knowing everything, that's her funeral. Literally. And if she doesn't, then I've saved my sister from making the biggest mistake of her life." I shrugged. "Either way, I win." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Don't forget. Final dress fitting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring the shoes we picked." Right. The emerald green monstrosity that made me look like a jealous swamp creature. Perfect metaphor, really. The next 6 weeks became an elaborate dance of playing the dutiful maid of honor while secretly building an airtight case against the groom. I attended the bachelorette party in Nashville, where I collected evidence of Trevor's texts to Amber throughout the weekend. I helped address thank you notes for shower gifts, while backing up Ethan's evidence to 3 separate secure clouds. I even managed to smile through the rehearsal dinner planning, while confirming that the venue's AV system could handle my presentation needs. What no one suspected, not even Margot with her highly attuned spiritual intuition, was that beneath my cooperative exterior, I was executing a revenge strategy worthy of my 400-per-hour legal mind. The pieces fell perfectly into place when Trevor's brother asked me to help with the wedding video tribute. "You knew him longest," he explained awkwardly at the rehearsal. "We need photos from before Margot." "I'd be happy to provide some materials," I agreed, thinking of the flash drive burning a hole in my purse. I have plenty of memories to share. 2 days before the wedding, I received a text that nearly derailed everything. From Margot. "Can we talk?" Alone. No mom, no wedding talk. Just sisters. We met at Westfield Park, sitting on the same bench where Trevor had once proposed to me. Margot looked unusually subdued. Her typical yoga influencer glow dimmed to energy-saving mode. "I need to ask you something," she said, after we'd sat in silence for a full minute. "And I need the truth. No sister protection." My heart pounded as I nodded. Had she discovered something? Had Trevor confessed? Was Trevor really the one who ended things with you? Or did you break up with him? Of all the questions she could have asked, this one blindsided me completely. "He ended it," I said cautiously. "Why?" Margot twisted her engagement ring, my repurposed ring, around her finger. "He told me you fell out of love with him, that you were too career-focused and he felt neglected." The audacity of this man knew no bounds. "Margot," I said carefully, "Trevor told me he needed to find himself, then apparently found himself in your yoga class 2 weeks later." Her face crumpled slightly. "That's what I was afraid of." She looked out at the park. "He's been acting strange lately. Protective of his phone, working late, making weird excuses." Well, well, well. How the turntables. "Have you asked him about it?" I asked, the sister in me temporarily overriding the revenge architect. "I'm afraid to," she admitted in a small voice. "What if I'm just being paranoid?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Behind the yoga mantras and perfect Instagram life, Margot was terrified of losing her fairy tale. And suddenly, my elaborate revenge plan seemed less satisfying than it had an hour ago. "Margot," I said gently, "what do you want to know?" She met my eyes directly. Everything. There's something poetically fitting about wearing emerald green, the color of envy, while systematically dismantling your sister's wedding. Not that I was operating on pure jealousy anymore. After our park bench confession session, this had evolved into something more complex. A rescue mission with nuclear capabilities. I had shown Margot everything. Well, almost everything. The timeline of Trevor's infidelities, Amber's not-so-subtle Instagram posts, and enough text screenshots to wallpaper a small bathroom. I held back Ethan's evidence only because some truths are too devastating to process 48 hours before you're supposed to walk down the aisle in a $5,000 dress. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. "I need time to think," she had said, staring at the evidence with glassy eyes. Not denial, not collapse, just processing. "Do you want to postpone?" I had asked gently. "No," she replied after a long silence. "I need to handle this my way." Which is how I found myself on Saturday, June 12th, standing in the bridal suite of the Lakeview Country Club, zipping Margot into her wedding gown like we were preparing for battle rather than matrimony. Mom fluttered around us, oblivious to the tension crackling between her daughters. "You look absolutely perfect," Mom gushed, adjusting Margot's veil. "Trevor is going to be speechless." "That would be a first," I muttered, earning a sharp look from Mom and a suppressed snort from Margot. The ceremony was set for 4:00 p.m. in the garden terrace, where 150 guests were already being seated among white roses and emerald ribbons. Through the window, I could see Trevor greeting guests with his parents, looking every bit the devoted groom in his custom gray suit, the same suit style he had once claimed was too traditional for our wedding. "5 minutes, ladies," the wedding coordinator chirped, poking her head in. "Bride ready?" "As she'll ever be," I answered, meeting Margot's eyes in the mirror. A silent question passed between us. "Are we really doing this?" Margot squared her shoulders and nodded slightly. Whatever she had decided, she was committed. The music began. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle in their identical emerald dresses, followed by me, clutching my bouquet like it might shield me from the emotional shrapnel about to fly. Then came the collective gasp as Margot appeared, a vision in white lace, escorted by our father. Trevor's face performed an impressive display of appropriate groom emotions. Awe, love, gratitude. The man deserved an Oscar for his performance as decent human being. The ceremony proceeded with painful conventionality. The officiant spoke of love and trust. Irony so thick you could frost a wedding cake with it. Vows were exchanged. Trevor's included promises of faithfulness that nearly triggered my gag reflex. Rings were placed on fingers. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional moment of silence. I felt the weight of Olivia's stare from the third row, Ethan's expectant gaze from the back. This was it. My moment to object dramatically like in the movies. I stayed silent. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Trevor leaned in for the kiss that sealed their marriage, and I led the obligatory applause while mentally reviewing my evidence presentation for the reception. Just because they made it through the ceremony didn't mean the war was over. The cocktail hour passed in a blur of champagne and small talk. I smiled for photos, toasted when required, and kept a careful eye on both the newlyweds and the AV setup for the reception. Trevor seemed to be avoiding Amber, who had come as another accountant's +1 in a dress that redefined inappropriate for a wedding. At 6:30 p.m., guests moved into the main reception hall, a stunning space overlooking the lake with floor-to-ceiling windows catching the golden hour light. Tables adorned with elaborate centerpieces formed a semicircle around the dance floor and head table, where I would soon deliver my maid of honor speech. Dinner was served, wine flowed. The father of the bride toast brought tears to half the room's eyes, including mine, though for different reasons. Then the DJ announced, "And now, please welcome the maid of honor, Sylvie Cooper, for her toast." I approached the microphone, flash drive in hand, heart pounding. The presentation was ready to go, loaded onto the AV system during cocktail hour. One click and Trevor's house of lies would collapse spectacularly. Looking out at the expectant faces, my parents, Trevor's family, friends who had attended my almost wedding. I felt a moment of hesitation. Was public humiliation really the answer? Then I saw Margot's face, my little sister, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, and Trevor beside her, arm possessively around her waist, whispering something in her ear while eyeing me warily. I placed my glass down and adjusted the microphone. For those who don't know me, I'm Sylvie, Margot's sister, and Trevor's ex-fiancé. A ripple of uncomfortable awareness moved through the crowd. Good. No sense pretending we didn't all know the awkward backstory. When Margot asked me to be her maid of honor, I had what therapists call a lot to process. Polite laughter, tinged with nervousness. But standing here today, I realize that sometimes life takes unexpected turns for reasons we don't immediately understand. I paused, looking directly at Trevor, whose expression wavered between relief and suspicion. I've known Trevor for 5 years. I've known Margot her entire life. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people will always show you who they really are, if you pay attention. My hand hovered near the remote that would start the presentation. One click. That's all it would take. Margot, I continued, turning to my sister, you deserve a partner who treasures your spirit, your kindness, and your trust. You deserve someone who understands what commitment really means. Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, loosening his tie slightly. And Trevor, I said, my voice hardening just enough, you deserve exactly what's coming to you. Before anyone could react to that thinly veiled threat, the lights dimmed slightly, and the projector screen behind me illuminated. But it wasn't my presentation that appeared. It was Margot's. Actually, Sylvie, Margot said, standing and taking a remote from her wedding dress pocket. Apparently bridal designs really had evolved. I thought I'd handle this part. The screen displayed a title slide reading, A Love Story, the unabridged version, with a picture of Margot and Trevor. I want to thank my amazing sister, Margot continued, taking the microphone from me with a meaningful look, for showing me what real sisterly love looks like. Sometimes it means telling hard truths, even when it hurts. She clicked to the next slide, which showed Trevor's text messages with Amber, dated just 3 weeks ago. Collective gasps rippled through the reception hall. As many of you know, Trevor and I had a whirlwind romance, Margot narrated as she advanced through slides documenting Trevor's various infidelities, including some even I hadn't discovered. What you may not know is that while I was planning our wedding, Trevor was planning weekend getaways with his colleague Amber. Trevor lunged for the remote, but Margot deftly sidestepped him. Not so fast, honey. I'm just getting to the good part. The next slide showed bank statements indicating a second apartment in Chicago, one I hadn't known about. It turns out finding yourself is pretty expensive, Margot commented dryly, especially when you're maintaining a love nest for multiple girlfriends. Trevor's face had bypassed red and achieved a shade of purple I'd previously only seen in rainbow art projects. Margot, this is inappropriate, he hissed, glancing desperately at the stunned guests. Inappropriate? She replied sweetly. Like your text messages to my yoga classmate during our engagement photos? Those kinds of inappropriate? As if on cue, the screen displayed exactly those messages, time-stamped during our session with the photographer. Trevor's parents looked stricken. Amber from accounting quietly slipped out a side door. I considered going through with this marriage despite knowing everything, Margot continued, her voice steady. I thought maybe I loved you enough to overlook your extracurricular activities. But then I realized something important. She turned to face Trevor directly, the microphone capturing every word. I deserve better, and I refuse to spend my life with someone who treats commitment like a suggestion rather than a promise. With that, Margot removed her wedding ring and placed it on the table in front of Trevor. Consider this my wedding gift. I won't be needing it. She turned back to the astonished crowd. The bar will remain open, the band will continue playing, and the cake is excellent. Please stay and celebrate what this day has truly become. My independence party. And with that, my little sister, who I'd underestimated in so many ways, walked out of her own wedding reception, head high, leaving behind a shell-shocked groom and 149 guests who had just witnessed the most memorable wedding toast in Illinois history. I caught up to her in the lobby, kicking off her heels with an expression of pure liberation. That, I said, genuinely impressed, was masterful. Margot grinned. I learned from the best. Now, are you going to help me change so we can go back in and dance, or what? I paid for that band, and they know all the Beyoncé songs. It's been 6 months since the wedding that wasn't, and life has taken some unexpectedly satisfying turns. For starters, Margot moved into my spare bedroom for what was supposed to be a few weeks, but has evolved into a surprisingly functional sister-roommate situation. Turns out we both make excellent coffee and terrible dating decisions, which creates a perfect domestic balance. Trevor, on the other hand, has been experiencing what my father calls karmic debt collection. After Margot's public PowerPoint of betrayal went semi-viral among Fairview Heights' social circle, his accounting firm suddenly found compelling reasons to restructure his position. Apparently, clients prefer accountants who can at least pretend to understand ethics. Did you hear? Margot asked last Wednesday, scrolling through her phone during our weekly wine and takeout night. Trevor's condo is on the market, priced below value. I raised my glass in mock toast. To financial consequences. May they be as swift as they are devastating. The aftermath of Weddinggate was initially awkward. Mom spent 3 weeks alternating between teary phone calls and sending us links to family therapy options. Dad, however, emerged as the unexpected MVP, showing up at my apartment with Margot's favorite comfort food and a simple, "I'm proud of you both." Most surprising was the reaction from Trevor's own family. His mother called Margot personally to apologize, admitting she'd suspected her son's character issues for years. His brother sent us the wedding video footage, not of the ceremony, but of Trevor's face during Margot's presentation. We've watched it on particularly rough days, a visual antidepressant that works better than prescription meds. The wedding gifts created a unique ethical dilemma that Margot solved by hosting a redistribution party where guests could either take back their presents or drink enough champagne to forget they'd spent money on a toaster for a serial cheater. Most chose the latter, which is how we ended up with 3 stand mixers and enough high-thread count sheet sets to open a boutique hotel. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked Margot one evening as we unpacked the last of her belongings that had been in storage at our parents' house. Not the leaving him part, but the nuclear public execution? Margot considered this while carefully arranging her crystals on my, now our, fireplace mantel. Sometimes I wish I'd been more elegant about it, but then I remember how he looked me in the eye every day for months and lied, and suddenly I'm at peace with my choices. I nodded, understanding completely. The drive for public vindication versus private dignity is a complex calculation, especially when the math involves a $35,000 non-refundable venue deposit. Speaking of complex calculations, life dealt Trevor another mathematical blow when both Amber and the yoga classmate discovered they were dating the same newly single accountant simultaneously. According to Ethan, who has become a surprisingly regular presence in our social circle, the confrontation occurred at Westfield Plaza's lobby bar and involved 2 women comparing identical text messages, while Trevor attempted to explain the concept of scheduling conflicts. Karma really is just revenge without the effort. As for me, the experience has been unexpectedly therapeutic. All those years of wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough, answered in one explosive PowerPoint presentation. The problem was never me. It was always him. "You know what the weirdest part is?" Margot said one Sunday, as we walked through Westfield Park, now reclaimed as our territory rather than the scene of romantic crimes. "I'm actually thankful it happened this way. Thankful for public humiliation and emotional trauma? That's very evolved of you," I replied, only half joking. "No," she laughed, nudging my shoulder. "Thankful that I found out before rather than after. Thankful that my sister cared enough to tell me the truth, even when it was horrible. Thankful that I was strong enough to walk away. Strong enough to walk away. Something neither of us had managed to do properly until that moment at the reception. There's something powerful about declaring your worth in front of 150 witnesses. It makes it harder to take it back later. Mom still occasionally sighs about wasted opportunities when she's had too much wine at family dinners, but even she has come around to what Dad calls our sisters before Mister's Renaissance. Last week, she actually asked if Ethan was single, proving that her matchmaking gene can never be fully suppressed, just redirected. Life isn't perfect. Margot still leaves wet towels on the bathroom floor, and I still work too many hours. We both still occasionally check Trevor's social media, though less for pain and more for schadenfreude as his life continues its satisfying downward trajectory. The professional psychologist types would probably say we're not fully healed, but they charge $200 an hour to state the obvious. What we are is stronger, wiser, more selective about who gets our trust and who deserves our energy. The emerald bridesmaid dress still hangs in my closet, a silky reminder of the day my sister chose truth over fantasy and self-respect over social expectations. Some might call it the dress of betrayal. I prefer to think of it as the uniform I wore into battle the day both Cooper sisters finally won. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is watching someone who hurt you lose everything they schemed to achieve, then sending them a glitter bomb when they least expect it. The latter is hypothetical and definitely not something we did on Trevor's first day at his new, significantly less prestigious job. But living well comes in as a close second. And that part? We're absolutely nailing it.
He locked my daughter in the garage for 2 days. I returned from a business trip, and instead of hearing her laughter, I heard faint crying coming from the garage. I opened the door and found Emily, 5 years old, exhausted, bruised, her voice hoarse from crying. When she whispered, "Daddy did it," the betrayal turned into a cold fury, and I made up my mind. I would make his life a living hell. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and let me say hello to your city. I pulled into the driveway at about 4:45, briefcase still in hand, my mind only on the glass of cold water waiting in the fridge. Quarterly reports could drain a person, even after more than a decade in business. But the silver sedan parked in my usual spot stopped me cold. Robert's car. He never came without calling first. Before I could even reach the front door, it swung open. Chloe stood there, smile stretched tight like cling wrap pulled too far. "Jess, perfect timing. We have an amazing opportunity to share." I stepped inside and set my suitcase on the entryway table. Robert sat on the sofa, hands clasped between his knees. He glanced at me briefly, then looked away. On the coffee table was a pile of glossy brochures, spiral-bound packets, and small bottles with labels promising vitality and wellness. "What is this?" I asked. Chloe gestured like a game show host revealing a prize. "A golden opportunity in the wellness industry. We're talking real wealth building here, Jess. It's next-gen multi-level marketing." I walked closer and picked up a brochure, full of before and after photos, income projections shooting straight up, testimonials from strangers about their transformed lives. "How much?" $45,000. Chloe replied casually, like discussing lunch. "An investment in Robert's future. In Emily's." I looked at my husband. He still couldn't meet my eyes. "Let me see the business plan." Chloe laid out the documents, going on about breakthrough products and unlimited income. I flipped through each page, drilling into the numbers. The commission structure revealed itself quickly. 70% of income came from recruiting new distributors, not selling products. Each recruit had to buy $3,000 worth of starter inventory. In the fine print, it said only 2% of participants ever turned a profit. I grabbed my notebook and started calculating. If Robert recruited 6 people, and each of them recruited 6 more, and so on, the math collapsed under its own weight. Just 7 levels down, and you'd run out of people in Florida. "This is a pyramid scheme," I said. Chloe's smile stiffened. "People always say that about network marketing at first. Success belongs to those who believe success belongs to the 3% who got in years ago." I tapped the income disclosure buried on page 14. I pointed to the chart. "Look at these numbers, Robert. Do you understand what they're showing?" My husband mumbled something I couldn't make out. "This model needs endless recruitment," I continued. "And when the pool runs dry, and it always does, the 97% at the bottom lose everything. You're asking me to bankroll it, to invest our daughter's future just to land among the 97%. You don't understand modern business. Chloe's voice had sharpened. I understand data. And it doesn't lie. I folded the documents and looked directly at my husband. I can't support this. Just like I can't support two people having an affair and pretending to be coworkers. That's when his mask dropped. You always doubt me. You never believed in me like Chloe does. Never, he shot to his feet, the chair scraping against the tiled floor. You're sitting on a pile of money while I'm trying to build something for our family. You even made me crash at Chloe's place. You never gave without strings attached. A freezing sensation gripped my chest. His voice was shaking with anger. You made me feel like a beggar in your house. I stood up, walked to my home office, and came back 30 seconds later with a folder. Old habits die hard for a businesswoman. I kept copies of everything. I laid out the documents in chronological order. Bank statements, voided checks, loan agreements signed but never repaid. March 2022. My voice was steady. $35,000 for you to start a business. You called it a loan. I never asked for it back. Just as Chloe opened her mouth, I cut in. July 2022. $20,000 for inventory for your boutique. But he hid it. Said he was investing with a friend. That too was called a loan. The boutique shut down after 6 months. March 2023. $15,000 for a car. He said he needed a new one for work. And these little slips. Total for 2024. $20,000 spread across various things he said needed to be paid off immediately. I laid them out in a straight line. A total of $90,000 in exchange for silence. I have full documentation. Not a single cent repaid. Not a single thank you. And now I'm met with resentment. The kitchen went silent. Chloe looked at the pile of checks like she wanted to shred them. Robert stood up, still avoiding my eyes. Let's go, he said quietly. Chloe grabbed the documents, stuffed them into her bag. Papers scattered. No one bent down to pick them up. You'll regret this. Chloe pointed her finger into the space between us, then hissed, I won't forget the way you treated us. Keep your money, with your personality. Robert's never coming back. Robert walked toward the door. I tried to catch his eyes one more time. If you want to talk more, fine, but not tonight. And not about this scam. Let's go. Chloe yanked his arm. We don't need her. I stood at the doorway and watched them head to the car. The sedan backed up too fast, tires screeching on the quiet street. I stayed there until the taillights disappeared, then turned back into the house. The kitchen counter still bore the traces of 5 years I'd spent trying to help my husband. The MLM brochure sat atop the pile of papers, bold letters promising financial freedom. I sat down slowly, placing both hands flat on the cool surface. My breathing was steady, on purpose. Something had shifted in the past hour, not shattered. Shattered implies weakness. This felt more like a recalibration, an audit of bad debts left to rot too long. I thought of how Robert never once stood up for me when Chloe accused me. The way he didn't flinch at Chloe's intimate touches. The way he just stood there, passive, as she rewrote our family history. The husband who once helped me analyze spreadsheets, who once valued honesty, who once loved me and our daughter. He had disappeared somewhere along the way. The Florida evening light poured in with its signature dull gold. I looked at those documents, adding up all the things I never asked repayment for. When you've been in business long enough, you start to see patterns. The deficit column growing, assets dwindling, the investment that never breaks even. And finally, I saw what was right in front of me. This was no longer a family. This was a transaction that had always taken from one side, a deal running at a loss for 5 years, and now they wanted another $45,000 just to keep the deficit going. The decision arrived as cleanly as a balanced equation. No more funding failure. No more pretending silence could hide betrayal. No more accounts for people who only saw me as a cash machine. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder. My hands were steady, my mind was clear. The house felt different, maybe quieter. Or maybe I'd finally heard the absence of a relationship I had paid for, but never truly owned. The MLM flyer on the table. I tossed it into the trash. Act 2. My mother, Martha, came home just after 8 p.m., both arms full of grocery bags. She stopped at the kitchen doorway, looked me straight in the face before saying anything. Something happened? I told her everything, in detail. My tone calm, like I was presenting a financial report to a client. When I mentioned the $45,000 investment, her hands paused mid-motion as she was putting away vegetables, fingers still resting on the fridge door. How much this time? $45,000 for a disguised pyramid scheme posing as a wellness product business. Martha shut the fridge and sat down across from me. She picked up the brochure they left behind, skimmed through a few lines, then set it down. You said no, right? Not only did I say no, I showed them why it was wrong. They didn't like that. She repeated, They? Chloe came with him. Martha reached across the table and held my hand. Jess, you did the right thing. I exhaled, gave a sad little laugh. I don't know. Maybe I could have been softer. Maybe my daughter would have had a more perfect family. She squeezed my hand tighter. This is the 4th time he's come to you with these get-rich opportunities. Every time you gave money, every time it was lost, and not once did he take responsibility. She stood up, walked to the calendar by the phone, ran her finger across the crossed-out dates. Emily's birthday last October. He said he'd come, then canceled 2 hours before. Said he had work, but you and I both know he stayed, because Chloe wasn't feeling well. Thanksgiving. Christmas. Didn't show up. She turned back, voice slow. When's the last time he called just to check on you, not to ask for money? I stayed quiet. When? I can't remember either. He's 38 years old, Jess. Your daughter needs a father, not a friend who acts like one of her classmates. But he's still Emily's dad. I know. That's exactly why you need to be firm and make a smarter choice. That night, we talked until almost 10 p.m. Mom brought up things I'd tried to ignore. How Robert had changed since meeting Chloe. How Emily changed after we separated. How he only showed up when he needed something. How he let another woman speak on his behalf. She asked me, if this were a business partner, what would you advise them to do? I said, cut the losses. She looked me in the eyes. Then take your own advice. After packing and confirming my conference schedule, I stepped into Emily's room. She was sitting on her bed, hugging the teddy bear Robert had given her when she was 3. The nightlight cast a warm glow on her face, those brown eyes wide, waiting for me like she somehow sensed something was coming. I sat beside her, brushing her tangled soft hair. Mommy and Daddy won't be living in the same house anymore, sweetheart. Daddy will have his own place, but he's still your daddy. I just want you to know, no matter what, you are still so loved. Emily looked at me for a moment, then gave a tiny nod. I know. Daddy. Her words caught in my throat. Daddy always says he's busy, but I notice he only comes when he needs something, then leaves right after. I held her hand, trying to keep my voice steady. Does that make you sad? Not really sad, she said, eyes following the lamplight reflected on the wall. Daddy promised to take me to the park, then forgot. He didn't remember my birthday last year. I remember he said, next week, 3 weeks ago. Emily turned back, gently touched my cheek. It's okay, Mommy. I think you're doing the right thing. I don't want you to be sad every time Daddy comes home. Her words cut like a knife. I held her close, feeling her tiny breath steady on my chest. I didn't tell her the truth, that Robert was living with Chloe just 10 miles away. To Emily, I still said Daddy was on a work trip. I kissed her hair, whispered, Mommy will always be here. Always Emily nuzzled into my neck, and in that moment, I felt the simplest, truest kind of love. She didn't need explanations, didn't ask for reasons. She just wanted real love. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Maybe because I had finally told my daughter the truth. Maybe because I had finally made the right decision. The next morning, everything felt eerily normal. The coffee machine hummed. The smell of toast filled the kitchen. I packed for Orlando, just a 2-day trip, with the tidy rhythm of someone who's traveled for business hundreds of times. Mom pressed a to-go coffee into my hand. "Text me when you get to the hotel, okay?" I always do. I know. I still worry. I bent down to kiss my daughter's forehead. Just 2 days. I'll be back Saturday afternoon. I'll bring back those little cakes you and Grandma love from the airport. She walked me to the door, waved as my car backed out of the driveway. Everything seemed neatly closed, settled. I didn't know that while I was listening to endless presentations on financial strategy at the conference, my mother was at home clearing the bathroom drawers. And I had no idea that at that exact moment, Robert was standing outside that door, silent, waiting, and about to do something that would make sure things would never be the same again. I left home at 9 a.m. Mom stayed behind to watch Emily. Orlando greeted me with a day packed full of meetings, session updates, presentation slides, handshakes. But my mind kept drifting back to last night, to the look in my daughter's eyes when she asked, "Mom, are you sad?" I texted home. "Just arrived." Mom replied, "All good." "We're having noodles." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on the papers in my hands. While I was listening to a cost accounting update, Mom went into the bathroom to clean. Later, much later, she told me, her voice still shaking, that just as she reached for the mop, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Robert walk in. "Robert! What are you doing here?" He grabbed her by the shoulders and shoved hard. She stumbled, hitting the sink, a burning scrape opening on her arm. "Robert, stop! What are you doing?" She reached into her pocket for her phone. He snatched it away. His voice was flat, as if rehearsed. "You're going to stay here until Jess transfers the money. Chloe needs it. This ends the moment she agrees to sign, before she could even process what was happening." He slammed the bathroom door shut in the garage and dragged a table across to barricade it. Emily heard the noise, ran downstairs, and met Robert at the doorway. She cried, "Daddy!" He scooped her up, set her inside the garage, and slid the latch. His hands were shaking, but his fingers didn't forget the code. He pressed twice, once to lock inside, once to bolt outside. Mom lunged forward, pushing with all her strength against the door. Useless. "Jessica's in Orlando." "She won't be back for days. You can't lock me and Emily in here." Robert stepped back, eyes avoiding hers. "Stay put, Mom." "She needs to learn her lesson." Mom tried everything, reasoning with him, while Emily clutched her doll, sobbing, not understanding what was happening. The little girl kept running to pound on the garage door, then turned back to help her grandmother try to move the table blocking them. "You're hurting your own daughter." "Please, there's no food in here. She's too young." "This is a crime." "You'll go to jail." Robert's face twisted for a moment. Maybe guilt. Chloe was right. Jessica's always held me back. "This is the only way she'll understand." He backed toward the front door. "Robert, please. She's supported you so many times. You know that." He hesitated for a second. "She exaggerates. That money was a small fraction of what she has. No. Jess has done everything to help you. You've seen it." He swallowed hard. "No. She has more. Chloe told me." "You're insane. You'd rather believe her than your own wife?" Robert's voice dropped. "I choose the one who loves me." Then he left, closing the main gate behind him, leaving my mother and my daughter screaming, trapped inside. 2 days, from Thursday to Saturday, my little girl had no food, no phone, no way to call for help. The garage window was too high and too small. The tempered glass wouldn't break, even when Mom tried hitting it with the mop handle. It was August in Florida. Even at night, the heat didn't let up. Mom said she tried to conserve energy, standing close to the door to listen, calling out until her voice gave out. All she could do was try to soothe Emily to stop her crying. Then the child started fading from exhaustion. The nearest neighbors were too far. No one heard a thing. By the second day, I still couldn't reach my mother. After 2 days at the conference, I handed off all my work to my assistant. When the car turned onto my street, I exhaled quietly, telling myself I was just being paranoid. Chloe's warning before I left had gotten under my skin. I parked, ran inside, and called out, "Mom! Emily!" No answer, no TV, no footsteps. The kitchen empty, the living room empty, the bedroom neat as when I'd left, but the lights were still on. My heart started pounding. Then I heard it, metal clanging against a door, faint, uneven. Coming from the bathroom in the garage, my hands shook so hard I entered the wrong code once. The second try, the door clicked open. Heat slammed into me like a wall. My daughter lay on the floor. Emily was curled up on the concrete, lips cracked, eyes glazed. "Sweetheart!" I dropped to my knees, pressed my hand to her cheek. It was burning hot. I screamed her name, desperate. "Emily!" Then a sound from inside, the rasp of my mother's voice, dry as sand. "Jess, here!" I shoved the table away from the door, pulled hard. The door creaked open. Mom stumbled out, leaning against the wall, her hair soaked with sweat, hands scraped raw. I grabbed my phone. 911. I need an ambulance immediately. My 5-year-old daughter was locked in a garage, severe dehydration. My mother was trapped in the bathroom. I got her out. Her ankle's injured. Are they conscious? My daughter's barely responsive. My mother can talk. I unscrewed the water bottle I'd brought, wet Emily's lips, dripped tiny sips into her mouth. She tried to swallow, coughed softly, a trickle of water running down her chin. "Slowly, baby." Her tiny hand weakly gripped my wrist. I held the phone tight to my ear, answering the dispatcher's questions in quick bursts. Mom leaned against the doorframe, her voice breaking apart. "Robert did this." The world shrank to those 3 words. He waited for you to leave. Wanted to force. The transfer. Chloe. I looked at my daughter's cracked lips, the bruises up my mother's arm, the suffocating heat inside that garage. 2 days. Robert had locked his own daughter and my mother inside this oven. No water, no mercy. A layer of ice spread across my chest, solid and hard. The sirens grew louder. I lifted Emily into my arms, the other hand steadying my mother through the doorway. The paramedics burst into the house like a gust of cool air. They checked Emily's vitals, set up an IV, took my mother's blood pressure, scribbled notes. I stepped back half a pace to let them work, but kept holding my daughter's hand. As they wheeled the stretcher toward the door, Emily's eyes fluttered open, searching for me. "I'm here." I climbed in beside her. Outside, the Florida sun was blindingly bright, almost cruel. But inside me, there was only one cold color left: resolve. The ambulance sped off, the siren tearing through the quiet weekend afternoon, and tearing apart the last fragile piece of softness I still had left for Robert. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes. 2 paramedics, gear in hand, rushed into the house. One young woman knelt beside Emily, checking her vitals, firing off rapid questions. I stepped back to give her space. The blood pressure cuff, the fingertip pulse oximeter, the pen light checking her pupils, the IV line, all done in swift, practiced motions. A man, his badge read Rodriguez, scanned the garage, snapped photos of the door lock, the cement floor where my daughter had collapsed, and several wide shots of the scene, standard protocol in suspected abuse and unlawful confinement. The woman looked up at me. "We'll be taking her to the hospital," then turned to my mother. "And her too." In the ambulance, I sat along the side rail of the stretcher, one hand holding the IV bag, the other clasping Emily's free hand. She already looked visibly smaller in just 2 days. Her eyelids had closed, and her breathing was slower, more steady now that the fluids were flowing. "She's stable," said Santos, the female paramedic, trying to comfort me. "But just barely. One more day, and this could have been a different story." The words dropped like a stone. I swallowed hard. My husband had nearly stolen my daughter's life. The ER was chaotic but organized. Emily was taken to an exam room. My mother, Martha, had her leg propped up and her ankle wrapped. The attending physician, James Wilson, middle-aged, kind eyes, efficient hands, took over, examining them while asking questions. How long was she locked in? Any water? Estimated garage temperature? Medical history? I answered clearly. The diagnosis was short but heavy. Emily was severely dehydrated, showing signs of heat exhaustion. She needed to be hospitalized for intravenous treatment and monitoring. Martha had a sprained ankle and surface abrasions. No internal complications. Recommended for short-term observation. The child's young, and your mother's elderly. Complications can come fast, the doctor warned. I signed the paperwork and waited in the corridor while they were moved. That was when the full weight of reality crashed down on me. The man I had once loved, the father of my daughter, Robert, had locked his child in an oven for 2 days, shoved my mother and imprisoned her, all just to threaten me. The rage forming inside me wasn't loud. A nurse brought over the admission folders. Your daughter is in pediatrics, room 412. Your mother is in room 406. You can go in now. I walked the hallway, filled with the sterile scent of disinfectant and cold machine air. Emily lay still, IV in her arm, monitor beeping softly. Her skin had begun to regain a little color. Martha lay across the hall, eyes a bit brighter. I took her hand. "Go home, Jess," she whispered. "Do what you need to do." I kissed her forehead. "I'll be back in the morning." Her eyes met mine, steady and deep. "Robert is still Emily's father." I paused at the door. No, he stopped being her father when he locked her in that garage. At 6:30 p.m., the fading sunlight painted the yard orange. Outside, the neighbors had no idea what had just happened. Inside, the air smelled like a house that had been closed all day. I didn't turn on many lights. I walked straight to the garage, stood in the doorway, staring at the space that had just held my child captive. The smell of sweat and fear still thick. I pulled out my phone and began recording everything. The keypad on the inner door, the high window out of reach, the concrete floor where Emily had collapsed. Wide shots to establish layout, close-ups of dirty handprints, drag marks, scratch lines on the door, the temperature reading on my phone, 93 degrees Fahrenheit at 7 p.m. I took photos of the doll lying limp on the floor, the dent where Emily had punched the door, the fallen shelf where my mother had tried to climb. This was evidence. Once finished, I drove straight to the police department headquarters. The night shift lights were still on. Detective Karen Morales was on duty. Sharp posture, sharp eyes, crisp movements. She sat and listened to my statement without interrupting, fingers gliding over her tablet, logging every timestamp. When I finished, she looked up. "Your husband no longer lives with your family?" "No, he's living with another woman." I handed her my phone, showing all the evidence I had photographed. She examined each image, nodding slightly. "This is criminal, Jessica. Based on your statement, we're looking at charges of unlawful confinement and child endangerment, possibly elder abuse as well." Morales drove with me to the house in an unmarked vehicle. She put on gloves, opened her evidence collection kit, took photos of the scene using a professional camera, dusted the keypad for fingerprints, retrieving multiple sets, mine, Martha's, and Robert's. She checked the lock mechanism. "When's the last time you changed this code?" "Never, since I bought the house." "Who knows it?" "Family?" "That includes Robert." She made a note, then paused when she spotted the camera on the floor. They were disconnected before the incident. Do the neighbors have cameras? I suddenly remembered the house across the street did. Tom had installed a ring last year. Morales crossed the road. Their lights were still on. Tom opened the door, and once she introduced herself, he pulled up the app immediately. The footage played. Thursday night, 7:14 p.m. Robert's silver sedan pulled up in front of my house. 7:17, he entered through the front door. 7:35, he walked out and drove off. The timestamps were as clear as ink on a page. Tom transferred a copy straight to Morales' tablet. Use it! That man doesn't deserve to be called a father. Back at my house, Morales was brief and firm. I'll be contacting Robert for a statement. She recited it back. The scene, my mother's statement, Emily's medical condition, the ring footage, the fingerprints, the lock access. With all this, we have grounds for prosecution. The district attorney's office will decide the exact charges, but at the very least, unlawful confinement, child endangerment, and elder abuse. All felonies. How long will it take? I'll try by Sunday, Monday at the latest. If he cooperates, we'll issue the warrant. I nodded. In my mind, the list was already forming, in order: formal complaint, restraining order, civil attorney, Emily's medical records, and everything else I would need to protect my daughter permanently from the man once called father, but who no longer deserved the name. After Morales left, the house fell into silence. I stood at the threshold of the garage one more time, letting the cold in my chest solidify into something hard. From this moment on, Robert would face every consequence of the choices he had made. Back in the living room, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, body drained but mind wide awake. Enough evidence, she'd said so. Unlawful confinement, elder abuse against my mother, child endangerment against Emily. Robert had planned this, waited for me to leave before he acted. And Chloe? Did she know? Or was she the one who pushed him? The phone sat on the coffee table. 4 missed calls from Robert. 3 unread messages. The contents were shameless. Jess, call me when you can. We need to talk, seriously. It's important. Please call back. He was calling while my daughter was locked in the garage. Was that guilt? Or checking if I'd come home early? 10:47 p.m. The phone rang again. Robert. I let it go through 2 rings, 3. On the 4th, I answered. His voice was rushed, nervous. Finally, you picked up. About what happened earlier. I know you're angry, but let me explain. I panicked. I only meant to force your mom to talk to you, convince you. The money thing was supposed to be just a few hours, I didn't think. I stayed silent. Your mom and Emily. Are they okay? Are you home yet? 2 days, I said. The line went dead quiet. 2 days, Robert. You locked my daughter and my mother in a garage in mid-August. No water, no food. His voice cracked. I thought you were gone just one night. If only you... So you waited until I left town to trap my family, and your excuse is that my trip lasted longer than you planned? Don't say it like that, Chloe. No, I just panicked about the money. I thought if maybe... You thought you could extort me by torturing your own daughter? He snapped, voice rising. Don't use that word. Emily's in the hospital for severe dehydration and heat exhaustion. The doctor said another day, and we might be talking about a very different ending. Jess, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. No, Robert. Not a mistake. This was deliberate. My voice was low, steady. You waited until I was gone. You used the door code I gave you when you were still a husband, still a father worth that trust. I'm still Emily's dad, he shouted. No, you're a criminal who assaulted an elderly woman and left a child to bake in an oven. His voice faltered. If you'd just help me. I gave you $90,000 over 3 years. You never paid a cent back, and you used my money to fund the woman you're hiding. And today, you chose to endanger your daughter's life over cash flow, he panted. Chloe said you'd twist the story, make me look useless. I froze for half a second. Chloe. He realized his slip. No, I mean, she. You mean your mistress encouraged you to do something to pressure me, and you chose to lock up my mother and my daughter? That's not true. It's exactly true. This call is being recorded. My voice dropped to ice. I've already filed a report. The police are investigating. I have every piece of evidence. You'll face charges for unlawful confinement, child endangerment, and elder abuse. Please don't. I'm Emily's father. You should have remembered that before you left her. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it ring out. 3 more calls, then text. Don't do this to me. Jess, please listen. I'm sorry, but Chloe's pregnant. If I get arrested, I'll lose everything. I read every word slowly, painfully, then deleted them all. I sat there in the dark, the phone finally quiet in my hand. Almost midnight. Tomorrow, Morales would meet with Robert. The legal machinery was already turning, but legal consequences weren't enough. I needed to destroy everything Robert and Chloe had built, everything they depended on. I reached for my briefcase, pulled out a yellow legal pad, clicked my pen. At the top, I wrote one word: consequences. Below it, I began the list, each line straight as a pulled wire. Sunday morning, the Florida sun slammed through the kitchen window. I'd been up since 5 a.m., coffee cold on the table, the legal pad filled edge to edge with writing. At 9 o'clock, I started making calls. Family law offices, civil attorneys, estate planners. Most were closed, so I left the exact same message. Seeking representation for a civil lawsuit and estate planning related to elder/child abuse. By 3 p.m., a number I didn't recognize rang back. Jessica? This is Jonathan Pierce. Come by my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. On Monday, I sat in a corner office on the 14th floor overlooking the bay, full-height glass windows. Jonathan was in his late 50s, silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened as I spoke, didn't interrupt, just took precise notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. What's your objective? Every legal consequence must happen. Criminal, civil, financial. As for the relationship, he locked my mother and daughter in a garage for 2 days. There's nothing to reconcile. He nodded. In that case, the strategy will be direct. He stood, picked up a marker, and drew 3 columns on the whiteboard. Criminal, civil, family, estate. 1. Criminal. You'll support the detective, submit all evidence, be ready to testify. 2. Civil. We sue for IIED, false imprisonment, child endangerment. I propose a $250,000 claim based on medical cost, therapy, and damages. 3. Family, estate. File for immediate protection, no contact order, divorce, restrict visitation rights. Update your will. Simultaneously establish a trust to lock assets for Emily. I looked at the board like it was a financial ledger. This was a campaign, and Jonathan had just drawn the battle map. We start with the will and the trust. Agreed. The paralegal printed a draft within the hour. 7 pages of legal language, but the core was clear. All current and future assets would transfer into the Emily Trust, managed by an independent trustee. Any visitation or access to assets by Robert would be subject to court order and strict safety conditions. I signed the last page. 2 witnesses signed. The notary sealed it. Late afternoon, as we reviewed the civil suit filing, Jonathan's desk phone lit up. A message from the private investigator. Preliminary report ready. He turned the screen toward me. Bullet points appeared. Current rental address of Robert and Chloe. Lease set to expire. Employment records. Credit report. Total outstanding debt. Approximately $35,000. Assets. Virtually none. The investigator had also tracked Chloe's business ventures. Chloe's startup history. $18,000 spent on supplements. $25,000 on essential oils. $17,000 on wellness. 3 MLMs over 3 years, $60,000 gone. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. The $45,000 they asked for wasn't an opportunity. It was a lifeline. He typed in another line. Risk of losing housing soon. Pending felony charges. Flagged records. Likely eviction from new landlord. He looked at me, calm and deliberate. They chose this path. I nodded. And I'll make sure they don't skip a single consequence. I closed the notebook, the cold, clear feeling in my chest finally solidifying, step by step, not rushed, but precise, so Robert and Chloe would walk every inch of the slope they'd greased themselves. Act 6. I brought Martha and my daughter home from the hospital that afternoon. My little girl was discharged after 48 hours of fluids and observation. My mother looked better, color in her cheeks, light in her eyes, but she still moved carefully. At home, I had everything ready. Water bottles, medication, the TV remote. She sat on the bed, glancing around as if seeing it all for the first time. I sat beside her, holding her hand. She was home. She was safe. That evening, as I was brewing orange blossom tea for her, the phone buzzed. Robert. I looked at the screen for a moment, then answered, to let him bury himself deeper. Jess, please. I know you hired a lawyer. Don't do this. I panicked. That's all. I leaned against the counter, watching the steam rise from the kettle, my voice steady. I've already filed the report. The police are handling it. There's nothing left to say. His voice dropped, pleading, full of words like mistake, family, until finally he shouted, What more do you want from me? I want you to lose everything you value more than your daughter's life. I don't value money over her. Not money? Then what? Chloe? He stammered. Chloe didn't know what I was planning. I swear I shot back. You said Saturday that Chloe predicted how I'd react. She knew exactly what I would do. Silence. Emily needs her father. I answered flatly. Emily needs safety. And her father locked her in a garage in mid-August. The silence stretched. I ended it. From now on, all communication goes through lawyers. I hung up, opened my contacts, and blocked his number. The screen went dark. The kitchen was quiet again, except for the faint whistle of the kettle. I texted Jonathan a summary of the call. A minute later, he replied, Keep the log. Screenshot your call history. Don't respond again. I did exactly that. When I brought the tea to Mom, she asked how things were progressing. I told her about the lawyer meeting, the will, the civil suit being drafted, the financial investigation. She listened quietly, expression unreadable. Finally, she asked one question. Is this truly what you need to do? I need him to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't hurt people and walk away. She looked at my face and saw the change complete. Then do what you need to. I trust you, but softly, she added. Just don't let it consume you. I won't. I stepped into my daughter's room. She was asleep on the bed. I looked at her, then checked my phone. An email from Jonathan. The civil lawsuit was ready for review. Filing scheduled for Friday, unless I requested revisions. Wednesday morning, 9:15. The phone rang. Jessica, this is Detective Morales. I wanted to inform you. We arrested Robert about an hour ago. He's being processed. I set my coffee cup down, straightened my back. Charges? False imprisonment and child abuse endangerment. Bail is set at $25,000. There's also a no-contact order for you and Emily. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Thank you. I ended the call and looked at my mother. She closed her eyes briefly, exhaled. It's happened. I poured her more tea, speaking as if reading from a checklist I already knew by heart. He'll need $25,000 to post bail. Then wait for trial. Did they have that money? I remembered the investigator's report. $35,000 in debt, no assets, no savings. No, Martha said nothing. I immediately emailed Jonathan and Emily's pediatrician. updating them, and requesting a medical statement confirming dehydration and heat exhaustion to include in the civil case file. The inbox showed received. At 2 p.m., an unknown number called. I answered. Jessica? A sharp, trembling voice mixed with tears. It's Chloe. What are you doing? You're his wife. How can you let Robert go to jail? I let her cry and ramble. He just panicked. I didn't know. You're being cruel. Then said clearly, each word measured. I've filed the civil suit. He committed multiple felonies. The police arrested him based on evidence. Evidence? You gave it to them? You could have let it go. Let it go? Why? He locked my daughter and mother in a garage for 2 days. He made his choice. Now he lives with it. Her voice cracked. He'll go to prison because you're too stubborn to help your own husband. I let the silence hang. Finally, I said, then start saving for his bail. I paused, then continued. You two have nothing left. $35,000 in debt. No assets. Your lease expires in 3 weeks. And Chloe, you burned $60,000 on 3 pyramid schemes. You didn't build a business. You built a fantasy. She went silent. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, calculated. You investigated us? I needed to know what I was up against. Perfectly legal in preparing a civil case, which I'll be filing Friday. On the other end, her voice turned threatening. We'll tell everyone you're lying, manipulating, jealous. I smiled. Tell it to the court. And bring evidence. I hung up, adding Chloe's number to the blocked list. An hour later, a friend texted me a link. Chloe had just posted a long rant on Facebook, calling me a manipulative woman, accusing me of exaggerating events to get revenge on her ex-husband, and implying I had fabricated everything to gain full custody. Her profile photo showed her standing next to Robert, with a shaky caption beneath. I didn't clap back online. I simply took screenshots of the full post, the comments, the timestamp, and forwarded the folder to Jonathan. 5 minutes later, he video called. Good. We'll send a defamation cease and desist immediately. Demand the post be removed within 24 hours, and that all copies be preserved in case we need to escalate. I nodded. Do it now. He promised it would be sent before 6 p.m. I returned to Emily, checked the room temperature, placed a small bell within her reach, confirmed this week's child therapy appointment. Everything was moving according to plan. The next afternoon, the email arrived. Cease and desist sent. At 6:10, Chloe's post vanished. On her feed, only the gray marker remained. This content isn't available. I opened my notebook and drew a clean line through one item. Defamation, removed. Then added the next goal. Serve civil lawsuit papers to both on preliminary hearing day. Night fell, and the house was quiet. Emily slept soundly, hugging her teddy bear. My mother sat in the armchair with her eyes closed, resting. She looked up when I walked in, watching me for a long moment. Sometimes I don't recognize you anymore, she said softly. This version of you. The one without love. I know, I replied, and she reached out to give me a warm hug. But Jessica, she added, when will it end? I whispered back to her, as much to myself as to her. It ends when every legal consequence is enforced. Criminal charges, civil judgment, permanent removal from the estate, when he's lost everything. Then we move forward. He's not my husband anymore, just someone I used to know. Martha closed her eyes. You're going to the arraignment? So, yes. I want to see his face when the charges are read. She looked at me again, her expression unreadable. Then finally she stood and headed toward her bedroom. At the door, she paused. I love you, Jessica. This version and every version, but promise me something. What? I asked. She thought for a moment, then said, promise me that when it's over, when he's punished and pays and loses it all, you'll let go. That you won't carry this bitterness forever? I weighed her words. I don't hate him, Martha. I just don't love him anymore. I don't care what happens to him after this. He'll be a stranger to me, and I never want to see him again." She nodded slowly. "Maybe that's worse than hate. Maybe, but it's honest." I sat still as evening deepened into night. The house was silent, except for the hum of the AC and the sound of my own breathing. Monday morning, I arrived at the courthouse. Security check, then the elevator up to the 4th floor. Robert and Chloe were already seated in the hallway, their heads leaned together, whispering in a rush. Robert wore a dark blue suit, broad in the shoulders, but wrinkled at the collar, eyes sunken with dark circles. Chloe stared at me, eyes hard. I walked past them without a word and sat on the opposite bench just as the courtroom doors opened. Judge Patricia Morrison stepped in, her voice crisp and firm. "Case, State of Florida versus." Robert Hayes prosecutor Rachel Torres stood. "The prosecution is ready, Your Honor." Robert's public defender, Sarah Chen, gave a faint nod. Torres presented with the precision of a scalpel. Emily's medical report. Severe dehydration, signs of heat exhaustion, crime scene photos, the neighbor's ring footage. 15 minutes. Enough to reconstruct the entire event. Sarah tried. This was a family conflict that spiraled beyond intent. The judge cut in, sharp. Locking a 5-year-old in a garage for 2 days in August is not beyond intent. That is grounds for prosecution. Sarah sat down, already defeated. I watched Robert the entire time. When they read the medical findings, he closed his eyes. When the garage photos played, his fingers gripped the table edge so tight they turned white. But he never once looked at me. The judge addressed him directly. "This court finds sufficient cause to bind over. The no-contact order with Jessica and Emily remains in effect. Trial date is set for September 15th, 9 a.m. Bail remains as previously established. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." The gavel dropped. 27 minutes, clean, cold, and final. I stood, gave a slight nod to the prosecutor, and walked into the hallway. Just outside the courtroom, Robert and Chloe were handed the civil lawsuit papers: intentional infliction of emotional distress, false imprisonment, child endangerment, with a proposed compensation of $250,000. Chloe burst into tears. Robert stood frozen, like he couldn't understand what language the word consequences was written in. That afternoon, Jonathan reported, "Complaint filed in the system. No contact order remains active." Everything continued rolling forward on track. I didn't respond to any of their messages. All communication, if any, would go through legal counsel. Thursday morning, an email from the private investigator. Robert and Chloe's landlord had sent notice the night before that their lease would not be renewed. 17 days left to find a new place. They scrambled for housing, but were met with rejections across the board. Sunday afternoon, a strange number flashed on my screen. I picked up. It was Robert. His voice was hoarse, worn down. "Jess, please don't hang up. I know I have no right to ask. I was wrong. We're about to lose the apartment. No one will rent to us. I'm going to jail. Everything's gone. Please. Help me." I let him speak until he ran out of breath. Then calmly replied, "Your mistake wasn't asking for money. Your mistake was locking your 5-year-old daughter in a garage for 2 days. The doctor said 24 more hours, and she might not have survived. You were 24 hours from murder." I didn't mean... Intent doesn't erase impact. You did it. Now you face the consequences. You'll go to court, take the ruling, and rebuild your life yourself. "Jessica, please," he begged. "I'm not your fallback anymore." I blocked his number, not because I feared he'd call again, but because I needed the finality that lived inside a single press of a button. That evening, Chloe tried a different route: Facebook. A long, emotional post. But this time, thanks to the defamation notice Jonathan had sent the week before, the post disappeared within hours. I saved all the screenshots, time-stamped every image. No online arguments. We'd speak in court. I didn't need to shout to win. I just needed records. Late at night, I stood at Emily's bedroom door. She slept peacefully, hugging her old teddy bear. I gently adjusted the thin blanket and softly closed the door. Tuesday. The full report from the private investigator arrived. Housing status. Still no new place. Financial status. Missed bail bond payment. Collections initiated. Employment. Terminated August 30th. Credit score dropped. Civil case. 3 legal aid organizations declined support. Every domino had fallen. Friday, Jonathan called. His voice carried a hint of surprise. Jessica, Robert's attorney just sent a settlement proposal. I stayed silent as he read. They're offering $10,000 in compensation, a public apology, admission of wrongdoing, and a full waiver of any inheritance or asset claims involving you and Emily. I asked slowly, "Where would they get that money?" "All they could scrape together," Jonathan replied. "But the real value is in the terms. A formal apology, a written admission of guilt, and permanent surrender of any legal rights to Emily. They wouldn't offer this unless they were completely cornered." I sat quietly, watching the light outside the window. "What will you do?" Martha asked. I ran my finger over the typed words. I would accept, not out of forgiveness, but because this was the most complete victory. Emily would be protected, and the truth would be documented. He would admit everything. He would give up everything. He would break. Martha placed her hand over mine. Then let it end. Monday, we would return to court for the final time. That morning, Martha insisted on coming with me. "I want to be there when it's over," she said. We dressed professionally and drove downtown. The courthouse felt familiar now. One last time. The civil hearing was held in a smaller, quieter room. Judge Thomas Rodriguez presided. Jonathan Pierce was already there. Sarah Chen arrived with Robert and Chloe. Both looked exhausted, neatly dressed, but visibly tense. When prompted, Robert stood, pulling a folded sheet from his pocket. His voice was shaky, flat. "I, Robert Hayes, apologize to Jessica and Emily for my actions. On August 15th, 2025, I unlawfully confined my daughter and my mother-in-law in a garage, causing significant physical and emotional harm. I take full responsibility." He folded the paper and sat down, eyes fixed on the floor. The room was silent. There was no remorse, only procedure. The judge read back the agreement, confirmed its validity. "The civil case is hereby closed." The gavel dropped, clean and final. Not long after, Jonathan approached. The prosecutor just confirmed. Robert entered a no-contest plea in the criminal case. The court ruled 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent no-contact order with me and Emily. Any violation could result in up to 10 years of incarceration. I asked, "What about Chloe?" "Currently being reviewed as a possible accomplice. Will proceed separately if there's sufficient evidence, but..." "She's pregnant?" I nodded. "Let the law take care of the rest." As I exited the courthouse, I saw Robert standing about 10 steps away, head bowed, hands clenched. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but I just looked at him. No anger, no pity, only recognition. Then I took my mother's hand and walked past him, like passing a stranger I once shared a home with. Behind me, Chloe burst into tears. The elevator doors closed, and I knew. That was the last time. That evening, I roasted chicken, Mom made salad. We ate on the porch, the sunset casting soft gold over the wooden table, in a silence that was peaceful. We talked about small things. Emily's parent-teacher meeting, her art therapy class, plans to set up a trust for her future. No one mentioned Robert. Both the civil and criminal cases were closed. 24 days since the beginning. I went into my office, opened my laptop, created a folder titled Closed, September 2025, moved every document into it, then shut it down. When I returned to the bedroom, my mother was already asleep. Across the hallway, Emily lay still, hugging her bear, her breathing steady. I stood quietly, looking at the two small women I had kept from falling apart. What I felt wasn't joy. It was complete peace. Justice had done its job, quietly, slowly, and precisely. I turned off the light and whispered, "We're safe now." If you've ever gone on a journey to reclaim justice for yourself or someone you love, share your story in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss the voices and victories of those who've risen after being broken.